Today, I am joined by Michelle Hardwick, who is a therapist, health practitioner, speaker, and author of Menopause Wingman. Michelle has spent over 25 years helping people navigate change, and after her own menopause journey, she recognized there was a huge gap in support, not just for women, but for their partners too. So, today we're going to talk about menopause, relationships, stress, gut health, and why we're supporting women through this stage of life and why it really is a team effort. So, good morning, Michelle. How
Absolutely.
are you?
Good morning, Rachel. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And it's lovely to have a chat with you here today. So,
Lovely
you
to be
spent
here.
over 25 years helping people. What made your own menopause journey different from what you expected?
Well, I was helping people through major life changes. And so I had been through some of them, quite a few of them myself. So I did have a reference point. I was aware of, what was coming or what might be some key indicators or factors, although every client is different, obviously. But I hadn't actually gone through the menopause myself,
Yeah.
and didn't really have any information from my mother, who never spoke about it, nor my elder sister. So I was completely in the dark about it. And I hadn't done any research because I was not expecting it.
Mhm.
When it started, I was 45.
Wow.
So I was not at all prepared.
Mm.
So, and I saw I was traveling in Asia. So I actually didn't see the markers. I didn't put them all together.
Mm.
Excuse me. I thought they were individual symptoms, and so the issue was not realizing. And then on top of that, another factor which I hadn't realized, I had been on the birth control pill for over 20 years,
Yeah.
and I'd come off that a few years before. So
Mm.
I hadn't realized that that would speed up the process as well. And so there was sort of a number of factors: the travel, also the being on the pill,
Mm.
and then these different symptoms that I wasn't really clocking. I was kind of aware that they were happening. And when I was in Hong Kong, I went to a herbalist,
Yeah.
and he said to me, he checked my pulse, checked my tongue, and said, no, no, no. He said, it's far too early for you to start menopause. And I was sort of completely shocked, because I was like, I'm not in menopause. That happens to older women,
Mm.
very old women, and I'm not an old woman. So I wasn't really in that kind of zone at all. And he said, I will give you some plants, I'll give you some herbs, and
Mm.
that will delay the onset of it, which it did.
Yeah.
So then I started at 50, but I still wasn't really prepared for it either at
Mm.
50. So
Wow.
I think, I hadn't really got myself organized and prepared. And I was so busy traveling and
Mm.
going here, there, and everywhere, and working on the business, that I
Mm.
wasn't really focused on myself and on my business. So it kind of really took me by surprise, to be honest. And then, of course, when everything hit, the full force of it was really overwhelming. So I think what then happened with my clients was I started to attract more women who
Mm.
were going through the same thing. So earlier I'd gone through, divorce and
Mm.
trouble with the stepchildren and stuff like that. So I had attracted clients like that. I think
Yeah.
the universe is really amazing and reflecting lots of stuff for us. So then I started, connecting in with women who were also having these challenges and
Mm.
difficulties. Now, I'm not a doctor, so I was referring them to different people, but my focus has always been the emotional component and looking at where that goes back to. So
Mm.
often it does go back to significant events in childhood.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, I was helping women deal with the stuff that was coming up, deal with the emotions, deal with the anger and the sadness and the grief and the loss of actually, going through this change, and how our bodies are changing, and how our our state is actually changing, but not that it's sort of a depressive thing, that there's actually something to look forward to. So that was where I was looking at the change in
Yeah.
terms of helping women. And then there were men who were coming, who were saying, I have no idea what's going on with my wife. She's so different. And I started to ask a few questions. And then I
Mm.
was saying, is she aware that she's maybe starting menopause? And they're like, no, no, no. Like, I didn't know either. So how could, if I don't know, how on earth could my husband or, other
Yeah.
partners know? So that was where I was sort of saying it's a possibility that this could be
Mm.
happening. And then sort of letting them know that, this could be on the cards, and how to prepare, and what to do, and how to help, and maybe what to say and perhaps what not to say. So
Mm.
that's really where that sort of started from, really, in terms of my own journey,
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
incredible, Michelle, and I can resonate with that. I was
Yeah.
very similar where I had some symptoms and again in isolation, and
Yes.
I wasn't connecting them because I didn't have the information at the time, and I was actually
True.
younger, I was 38.
Rachel,
So
my goodness me. Wow.
I
So it's
know.
not on your radar at all at 38.
Not at
No.
all. And I wasn't in this
Good
area at the
grief.
time.
Wow.
And it was only actually when I was training in perimenopause to support my clients. And
Yes.
I was going through the list and I'm going tick, 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 tick.
Yes.
And then
Yeah.
I was thinking, hang on, how long have I been going through this? And I worked out at that stage, I'd been in it 6 years.
Oh my goodness me. Wow.
So, and
That's
like that,
extraordinary,
it would
Rachel.
have,
Wow.
yeah, had impact on myself, my
Yes.
confidence, my
Yes.
relationship, and all of that. So,
100%.
as you're
Yes.
saying there, there's the
Yeah.
emotional side of that as well, and you touched on it there, but how significant do you feel the emotional side is over
Oh,
the physical side?
it's huge. It is huge. I mean, aside from dealing with the physical changes, whether that is not being able to sleep,
Mm,
the weight gain, the bloating, the challenge with food, the emotions have such a massive impact. And I found myself, you know, um, snapping at stuff that I knew myself would not have even registered in the past,
mm,
And so here I am, this sort of Zen person, completely freaking out or losing the plot. And I also found that I couldn't handle as much. I couldn't handle as much stress. I wasn't able to multitask the way I could.
mm,
So there were certain things that I realized, and also my memory, I didn't have that clarity and remembering things and the brain fog, so there were so many different aspects, and so I think for me it triggered that feeling of anxiety. I was losing control. I thought, I thought I was losing the plot. I actually thought,
mm,
well, maybe, I'm starting to go slightly mad here, So it was sort of a number of factors that you're noticing within
mm,
yourself. And so those emotions that come up then can trigger other things from the past where maybe we've been in situations in childhood where we didn't feel as much in control, or we didn't feel as safe, or we didn't feel heard or understood or listened to. And that's not the fault of our partners or husbands, but it can trigger those feelings that haven't been resolved. And even for myself, I've done a lot of therapy, I've done a lot of work. So I thought a lot of stuff had been put to bed. And for many, many years it had, and I was able to deal with it. But when you get this kind of crescendo of all these different emotions coming up, you kind of feel like there's a complete overwhelm. And that's where I think asking for help isn't a failure, where you can kind of start to pull on different threads and remove them so they're not part of the mix. And then that's when we can come back into balance. And that's where I think our strength is. So, yes, we've got all these changes happening, but if we can get a handle on what's going on emotionally, then
mm,
it's much easier. And then on top of that, if you're not sleeping well, you add that into the mix,
mm,
and then you're expected, as you've been in the past, because you've done this for so many years, you get up, you hit the ground running, and you're running through the day, and you get everything done, and then, or almost, and then you put it on the list for tomorrow. So when you don't get up, and when you're not feeling like you can do it, and things start to slide, then other people start to notice in the household, and
mm,
that's when we can get a bit, a friend of mine calls it crispy, we can get quite crispy with our tone, or with, our expectations. They can be a little bit, like, come on, and I think that's where usually what happens is the man steps away, so, or steps
mm,
back. It's like, whoa, I'm not quite sure what to do here. So I'll just give her more space. But actually, that's the time to step forward and to
mm,
go, hey, you know, I realize you didn't sleep last night. How about I do X, Y, Z, empty the dishwasher, walk the dog,
mm,
whatever. So there's a stepping up rather than a stepping back. And that's really key, because I think that's where, when I was writing Menopause Wingman, I was thinking about my own experience and thinking,
mm,
I really would have loved that in the beginning for my
mm.
husband to say, hey, I've got this, I'll do this, or let's go out for dinner. And he did
Yeah.
some of the time, but there was kind of elements where I just thought, oh my God, is that do I have to do that as well now, as well as running a business, as well as
Mm,
having a dog, as well as I have aging, well, my father passed away now, but
yeah.
there were the aging parents in the mix as well.
Mm,
So they're in Wales. I'm taking phone calls from the care homes. Do you know where your parents are? No, not at all. They've gone AWOL, so I'm dealing with that
mm,
and then my business and everything else. So, it was just overwhelming. And you
yeah.
just think, maybe it's better I'm not here, maybe I can't handle this anymore. This is far too much for me. And I did
Mm,
have those thoughts,
yeah.
particularly having a hot flush in the
Mm,
middle of the night, not being able to sleep, my face up against the tiles because I was burning up, and not realizing sugar was a major factor, made
mm,
my hot flushes worse. Alcohol,
mm,
processed foods. I just really, really did not track that in the beginning
yeah.
until I started going, every time I have a drink, I'm really not feeling that well afterwards. And it wasn't the amount, it was more about how was I feeling and what was happening in the middle of the night.
Mm,
You know what I mean? So I think having a bit more awareness, tracking things, asking for help, I think
mm.
those are no failures at all. I think that all serves to give you maybe a bigger picture.
Yeah,
Do you
absolutely.
know?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
100%. And
yeah,
as you mentioned there, like women can have different experiences. And I had brain fog. That would have been one of my symptoms now in
right,
isolation and worried
right,
something happened with my memory. And I hear that.
correct.
And like, as you say, no two women are going to have the same menopause. And
No,
a lot of women would equate it, well, I'm not having hot sweats, so I can't be perimenopause or in menopause.
correct.
So
Yes.
what would you
Yeah.
say to that person?
Well, I think there's so many different factors. I think you're right. Everything's looked at in isolation. We're not
Mm,
looking at it holistically,
yeah.
and as you were saying, to actually look at these symptoms and having them for the past 6 years, I think absolutely, we're looking at work in isolation,
Mm,
relationships in isolation. We're looking at what's going on with food in isolation, our bodies in isolation, but we're not actually bringing them all together. And so, if you can start writing these symptoms down and tracking them, then that really is so helpful, especially if you're going to a health professional like yourself. You'd be able to say, well, I'm noticing this is happening to me. And when I have that, that happens to me, then you've actually got a lot more information to work from. And
mm,
even, we're blindsided. There's a lot
yeah.
of things we don't know that are going on in our own system, because there isn't the information, or there wasn't anyway. Now there's a lot more information, but there wasn't then. And I think about my mother,
Mm,
she went through this without any support at all, and just had horrendous hot flushes, 3 kids, running a business with my father, household and the dog, and also had like a little B&B as well some of
mm,
the years
wow.
where she was managing that, the bookings, the payments, cleaning, the whole thing. So,
Mm,
she wasn't easy to live with
yeah.
through the menopause. By that time, my sister had left home and my brother had, so there was only me there, my father, and the
Mm,
dog. So, seeing that
yeah.
and seeing how unsupported she was, it was extra. There was nothing available
No.
for her, and nobody spoke about it. Like her mother had already passed away, so there was no one to actually talk about other than other women who were
Yeah.
also her contemporaries. They were going through the same thing,
Mm,
So there was absolutely. It was so silent and so hidden. So I'm so grateful now that we can chat like this and talk about it openly. And, for the women who are coming now behind us, there's a lot more information available, a lot more, tools and techniques and things that people can use. But, I was completely in the dark, and even
mm,
more so my mother.
yeah.
So I'm grateful there's a lot more information, but I think information is key, that
Yes.
you're actually having enough information from the right sources, but also that
Mm,
you're tracking your own body, the changes, your symptoms and everything else.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's very powerful. And as you touched on earlier, what would be something that you wish you knew at the start?
That it is a transition. that
Mm.
it isn't an end point, that it will get better, that it's amazing once you're through it.
Mm.
There's so many things that change. I don't feel I'm running anymore.
Mm.
Certain things that were essential to me before are not.
Yeah.
I think there's more of a reverence of life.
Mm.
Um, so I do think it's not the end. It's not the end. It's the beginning of something incredible. And asking for help is not a failure, to be able to look in. And if you don't feel that that information resonates with you, then keep looking. Don't just take that as, well,
Mm.
that's it now.
Yeah.
Keep looking, keep searching, keep informing yourself because, even every day there's more information coming out
Absolutely.
about the menopause. So we
Mm.
can all be educating ourselves, so keep looking, keep searching. And it can be really, really so liberating after the menopause. It's so freeing.
Mm.
Um, and, I think the relationship, when it is able to survive the
Yeah.
menopause, does get stronger as a result, you
Mm.
know. So, and there is an education process for
Yeah.
the man as well.
Hmm.
Um, so both of you are changing through this.
Yeah.
Nobody stays the same. You can't go through this unscathed,
Yeah.
so there is a strength in the relationship afterwards. So if you have survived that, you really can survive anything,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely. And moving on
Yeah.
to the story then behind your book, The Menopause
Yes.
Wingman.
Yes.
So you mentioned that it came from a conversation with a man called Richard. So have to tell us the story.
Yeah, I'll tell you the story for sure. So I was on a Zoom networking call and we'd been placed into separate rooms.
Mm.
So there was a lady there and a gentleman. And they said, well, why don't you start? So I said, I help women support them. I support them through the emotional aspects of the menopause.
Mm.
And the lady said, oh, I would really like to write a book about that. She was a publisher.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay. And I didn't sort of think about it. When people say things, you're kind of in a role and you're sort of still not. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he turned round and he said, you should write a book for men. If I'd had that, maybe my marriage might have survived.
Wow.
And it was really shocking because the force in which he said it, but also the fact that throughout those 8, 9 years up until that point, it had been about me,
Mm.
the changes that were happening to me,
Yeah.
the things that I was losing, the
Mm.
things that I was struggling with, the lack of sleep, everything else. So it was all about me. And so in that moment, I was like, oh my Lord, I have not considered my husband in
Mm.
this at all. I've spoken to him about it, but not really included him in the information I was
Yes.
finding. So it was kind of a pivotal moment where I thought, good grief, after all this time and all my years of working with people,
Yeah.
that I was blindsided and that because I was going through it, it was my thing.
Mm.
And also, I think I'd inherited that from my mother. My mother just, it was her thing. She was going to roll her sleeves up and get through this.
Very
And
likely.
yeah, and so didn't include my father either. So I think that was where I unconsciously just carried
Mm.
on the same pattern. So then in that moment, Richard talked about him being a publisher, and then the lady was also a publisher, and
Mm.
her publishing company was Inner Peace Press, and my business is called Release Peace. So we release the stuff, and then we have peace. So
Yeah.
I couldn't avoid that synchronicity either.
Yes.
And so we got together, we had a chat. Her
Mm.
name is Heather. And we started to chat about it. And I met with Heather every 2 weeks. And I didn't tell anybody about the book because sometimes I don't finish things. And I thought if I go telling everybody and I don't finish it, then, that's going to be,
Mm.
not comfortable for me. So, but actually meeting with her every 2 weeks, she kept things moving on. She
Yeah.
kept me on track. She kept me focused. And so I was able to get to the end. She had some amazing suggestions as well, which we
Mm.
included in the book, including asking men. So I had a survey and I was asking men to complete 6 questions and for them to actually give their feedback
Mm.
about their experience. And again, like you asking, well, what would I say to, a fellow man who was going through it?
Yeah.
And so we were collecting and collaborating with men to include that in the book, as well as my own experience of the 10 years, and then as well as, adding in, because I do practice mindfulness and meditation, and I share that with clients if that's necessary for
Yeah.
them or relevant. So I wanted to add in some questions as well for men to reflect and to think about, and for them just to stop and pause a little
Yeah.
bit. So we've kind of we added all the tools that I had within my 25 years and put them in the book as well. And so we sort of really wanted to make it, and it's not a big book, it's more of a handbook.
Yeah.
And so Richard really was one of those pivotal moments, and we talked about that earlier, about those pivotal moments,
Mm.
whereby he just said it and I was open to it, and I thought, yeah, challenge accepted. I think I can do it. I think it's possible. So he was instrumental really, and
Yeah.
unfortunately his marriage didn't survive. There was a lot of emotion there, and there was a lot of
Mm.
things that happened that unfortunately they weren't able to survive, the menopause. And there was other stuff that came up, of course, from her past
Mm.
that wasn't able to be worked through. And I think that's was also my quest, was to support the men,
Yeah.
but also to let women know that they don't have to do this alone, that there
Mm.
is support out there, and that they can process these emotions, not get swamped by them, and then
Mm.
be able to move on, and have a stronger relationship afterwards. So Richard was key really in
Mm.
that. I didn't set out to write a book. I mean, I didn't go on that call to write a book, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was kind of like one
Awesome.
of those,
Yeah.
stop, heart-stopping moments where I really went, oh my Lord, my poor husband, and I haven't even considered him in this whole process. And
Mm.
naturally so, because it's a woman's, experience and a woman's journey, but they need to be brought along. So my intention was kind of bring him along in the journey now, and actually
Mm.
have him walk beside me rather than step back, step away, and lose the connection.
Yeah, no, that's amazing,
Mm,
Michelle, as well. And I
thank
think
you.
it comes from women dealing with menstrual cycles all their life. And again, in privacy,
Yes,
there's a lot of conversation around menstrual cycles. So when it comes to
true,
menopause and these symptoms, the silence and the stigma is almost still there. And like yourself, I've
true.
come across so many women or men as well who
Mm,
are no longer sadly married. And when they tell me what age the relationship broke up, and it's between that 40 to 50 age group,
yes.
that's me thinking, has menopause had a contributory factor here?
Definitely. And I think there are studies in the UK whereby they're looking at, 51% of the women are instigating
Mm,
divorce or separation at that time, and even considering suicide. And
yeah.
unfortunately, there's that question as well where you're thinking, was it around that time where you
Yes.
just think, I cannot handle this along with
Mm,
everything else?
yeah.
So sadly, there's a lot of fallout through the
Mm,
menopause as well if there isn't sufficient support,
yeah.
and guidance and help and understanding.
Mm,
I think that's also where men maybe don't understand because they don't have that menstrual cycle.
yeah.
So it's very difficult for men to be able to really comprehend how
Mm,
massive this is and sort of put it down. Like, I was talking with a couple, she's English and he was Swiss.
mm,
And he was saying, this is psychological. What she's going through is psychological. And I said, no, actually, it's not. This is
mm,
physical, it's
yes.
emotional, it's emotional. And those are going to affect the
Mm,
psychology, but
yes.
this is not psychological. And even one lady I was talking to, and she was talking about her family. Her grandmother was put into an institution in the menopause. Now, this is many years ago.
Mm,
But that lack of understanding
yes.
goes back eons, and that's
Mm,
so sad. So I think, the more information we can get, the
yeah.
more information we can share, then the easier it will be. And I think also the younger men need to understand
Yes.
this is something that's coming. Now, I don't know, there may be new interventions that might stave this, I don't know, but this is part of our
Yes.
cycle and our life cycle.
Mm,
So if the younger children and the kids know, and there is information in the book
yeah.
as well about the family and what happens for the family and how, you
Mm,
know, certain members of the family could step up, like the kids could help with
Yeah.
food preparation, that sort of thing,
Mhm.
and just bringing that understanding into the family, not that mum's losing the plot or she's being difficult or,
Mhm.
inflammatory, that
Mm.
actually, no, this is something mum is going through or mum is going through, and we need to support her through this, just as she's supporting you,
Mm.
when
Yeah.
you take your exams or, through puberty,
Yes.
there's a flip side to this as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's really essential, is that understanding as well. It's key,
Yes.
because then there's no
Mhm.
judgment,
No.
and then there's no ridicule or humiliation, because there is a pure understanding of this as something physical, you know.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
not,
No.
it's not that she needs to be locked away here. She needs support,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's
you
the
know.
best thing, or the number one
Yeah,
thing that men could understand about menopause is that it is a support time of our lives. And
absolutely.
that conversation then that comes from that then can be very valuable and support relationships as well. But what do you find are some of the
Absolutely.
biggest misconceptions that men have about menopause?
I think that it's hot flushes.
Yeah.
It's just hot flushes. That's one of them,
Mm.
and that'll be over soon. It's not going to be a long journey, and that needs to be, fairly
Mm.
quick, and then we'll move on. So definitely the hot flushes is one, and that it's going to be a very short journey, and that things will go back to normal.
Mm.
Newsflash, not going to go back to normal.
Yes.
You know, we are evolving and we are changing, and our bodies are evolving and changing. And certain strategies that they might have used, particularly in intimacy, are not going to work, particularly if there's
Mm.
pain,
Yeah.
and the lack of libido,
Mhm.
which kind of leaves the planet.
Yes.
Um, and that there may be more supports needed there as well.
Mm.
And that the old ways of, where you might be kind of spontaneous, for some women, particularly for me, that spontaneity gone,
Mm.
you know, that needed planning, and not we had to put it on the calendar, but more like there was sort of much more thought that needed to go into
Yeah.
it. And so I think that's where men think, well, it's going to be fine, not realizing the pain, not
Mm.
realizing how sore it can be, how tender, and how when you're dealing with so many other things,
Mm.
that is the last thing on my list right now, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and maybe also looking at timing.
Hmm.
So nighttime, not a good time.
Yeah.
Absolutely exhausted. I'm wiped now. I've got nothing else to give. So
Mm.
looking at other times, maybe the morning,
Yeah.
if there's been a good night's sleep, where
Mm.
the energy levels might be a little bit higher, than the same routine. So I think that's it. The routine
Yes.
is changing. Everything is changing.
Mm.
And I think men need to know that we're not going back to normal. We're not going back to the way it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Does
as
that
I
make
said,
sense?
oh, absolutely. And, dare I say, after the dreaded COVID, where we had a new normal, and I think
Yes,
with menopause as well, it's not like, everything is lost and there can't be that intimacy and connection, but there's
true.
just a new normal and a new way of having that
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
finding out what works for you and your
Yes.
relationship and not being
Yes.
pressurized to what you see on television or hear from
Yeah.
your friends
Yeah.
or what's in social media.
Yeah, I think that's very true, actually, that there may be new things that you could try, different
Mm.
products that might be able to support you.
Yeah.
And I think there is a lot on social media. And I think this kind of, glamorous woman,
Mhm.
who's, sexualized. Yes and no, not
Mhm.
always.
Yes.
But there are things for you to navigate, and that's something in the book as well. That
Mm.
there are questions in there that the man can ask himself, but also that the man and the woman can actually discuss together.
Mm.
So difficult
Yeah.
questions that can be addressed and worked through together, and looking at the right timing to sit down and ask those questions. So there's a lot in the book as well as a support, because there are some difficult topics ahead,
Yeah.
so it is about being able to give some signposts,
Mm.
for the couple in terms of navigating this new normal,
Yeah.
you know, definitely, definitely.
Absolutely. And since
Yeah.
publishing the book, then have you heard any stories from couples that have stayed with you after reading it?
Well, there was one recently. So it, sometimes people buy the book for someone else
Mm.
and then end up reading it themselves and go, oh my God, you need to read this. So that's really nice that people do refer, the book on.
Mm.
But one lady bought it for her husband and he did read it. And she said, wow, there's been some major shifts. And she was delighted. And she said, actually, I think I will read the book as well. So that was
Mm.
really nice to hear.
Yeah.
And then in America, one girl's father had contributed to and put some feedback, his own feedback.
Great.
And then she'd said, he's reading it and he's going, oh, maybe we need to put a fan in your bedroom. Maybe we need to do this. Maybe we need to do that. Because there is a thing about the home, that this is a journey and
Mm.
your home is the base camp.
Yeah.
And so there are things that will need to change in the base camp.
Yes.
And so I've put some information in there as well in the book. And so
Mm.
he was reading that and kind of starting to think about the home environment and starting to help his wife make it easier. And I think that's what's
That's,
really
yeah,
lovely.
perfect.
And another person who contributed contacted me recently and he said, I've just ordered the book. I really need it now. So
Oh,
he sent me a photograph of it saying it's arrived and I'm diving into it now, So there's been some lovely, lovely kind of feedback, from people who have got a lot out of it. And I'm so, so grateful to them, feeding it back to
yeah.
me, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so lovely, and it's
yeah.
fantastic to hear you getting such a positive response as well,
Thank
because I think
you.
it's such
Yeah,
an important area. And like
thank
that,
you.
there's a lot of information for women, and now to see tools and
Yeah.
resources available for men then is just going to be fantastic.
I think
And
it writes the balance, doesn't it,
yes, it
Rachel?
does. It does, and that's important as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's good
yeah.
that there's lots of
Yeah.
information for women. I mean, that's necessary,
Mm,
essential even. Um, but like that, I think we do need to shift and bring them in along on the journey now and
mm.
not leave them behind in the dark, in silence. I think that's essential now. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
And touching back on the physical side of menopause, I know
Yeah,
you've experienced some digestive issues yourself, and
I
it's something
have.
that I see every day with clients as well. How did
Right.
you feel that affected you?
Well, I think it was sort of more trial and error. Like I would have certain foods and realize afterwards, oh, that really didn't sit well with me.
Mm,
So, I didn't make that connection. You did in terms of the gluten-free stuff where I just couldn't, and I had no problem when I was growing up. Like I came from a fish and chip shop background, so we had
mm,
battered fish, and pies and
mm,
pasties and puddings. And my father would always have bread and butter on the table. So I was from that background,
mm,
where I had lots of gluten, lots of wheat. And then in my 40s, 45, I started to feel really, really heavy and
mm.
unwell and
Yeah,
very bloated. Same with spicy food. I
yeah,
noticed, and I loved curry. I just couldn't handle the oil anymore in the curry. Um, and then very, very spicy foods, I would start to sweat, not just sweat a little bit, like a lot.
wow.
And then I would have trouble sleeping. I noticed also if I ate late, then I wouldn't
Mm,
be able to go to sleep or I would
yeah,
be tossing and turning through the sleep. So I was trying to figure out what was going on and not really, as we talked about earlier, not really
mm,
looking at all of it
yeah.
together. So um, also I noticed that if I had milk in my tea
Mm,
before, like my parents would always have the kettle on and always have cups of tea
yeah,
and I just couldn't I just didn't feel well. And the same with ice cream. I
yeah.
just couldn't handle that cold,
Mm,
that, you know, that kind of just the ice and everything else. And of course, when I was traveling, of course, I was having iced drinks,
mm,
ice cream, lots of
yeah,
ice cream, lots of spicy food, and just really feeling so unwell. And I remember I was taking a trip. We were in Malaysia and I was with a
mm,
group of friends and we'd taken a couple of days off. So I'd been working
yeah,
and then we'd gone for a road trip and then we were going back to Kuala Lumpur and I had been drinking ginger tea
yeah.
and I loved that ginger tea. And before I could drink it, not a bother. And I had a good couple of them and I had to make them get me to a petrol
Wow.
station to stop because I was going to have a really bad accident in the car and it was
Mhm.
just going to come right through me. And I was
Yeah.
like, we need to stop now. Like, we need to find somewhere, come off the road, find somewhere.
Mhm.
I'm in serious trouble.
Yeah.
Um, so there was sort of, just that whole and if you've had food poisoning, you
Yeah.
just do not feel well. You're grumpy, you
Mhm.
feel really upset, you could be tearful. So
Yeah.
there's this whole connection that, often is really overlooked, but
Yeah.
actually, it has such an impact on our well-being, doesn't it,
Mm.
Rachel? I mean, you'll find
Hugely.
that with your
Yeah,
clients, you know?
absolutely. Yeah,
Mm.
I find a lot that like that women when they get to 40s might find that they're suddenly having issues with foods like that, even the tea with a drop of milk, and now
Yes,
suddenly after all these years they're wondering why am I having an issue with that, or their favorite meal out, they can't enjoy it without being bloated and feeling 9 months pregnant.
exactly.
And
Yes,
menopause can disrupt the microbiome. So we start to see then an imbalance come in the guts. We have more bad bacteria than good bacteria, and that
right.
just disrupts everything. So these
Yes,
symptoms then start, and you can
yes.
find then that your motility might speed up or it might slow down, and dealing with constipation for the first time. And then,
Yes.
like you said, you were traveling at the time, but even I
Yes.
find with women now, even just going on a 2 week or a week's on a holiday, and they're finding then that they're having symptoms similar to yourself and they
Mm.
suspect food poisoning, but actually the travel
Ah,
itself and the heat and the cold drinks can all have a massive impact on those symptoms as well. So again,
yes.
it's like going back to that an isolation of the symptoms where we're
True.
thinking, I must have eaten something, it's the heat, maybe the meat wasn't cooked or
Yes.
the chicken wasn't right, and getting all of these
Yes.
symptoms and not then piecing it back to could that be related to my perimenopause or my menopause?
True. True. Yeah. And I think also if you've had any, like I had a really bad issue with my teeth, had to have one
Mm,
of them out, and then it became infected. So my immune system wasn't as well as it had been.
mm,
Um, and then, having to take antibiotics on top of that, that really threw my system out of whack. You
yes.
know, so definitely you're thinking, well, it's just that, or it's just this, or
Mm,
it's just that, but actually there's a whole gambit of things that are happening.
mm,
And not understanding about the microbiome and
yes.
how essential that is and how
Mm,
important that is as we get older. And I think sometimes people think, well, it's just me getting old.
yeah.
No, there are a
Mm,
number of symptoms happening here.
yes.
Um, and I think the bloating, like you said, that bloating and the heat, particularly
Mm,
here, we've had
yes.
so much heat that bloating has such a big, so people might start dieting or whatever, but it's
Mm,
actually got nothing to do with that at all.
no,
Mm,
absolutely.
mm, yeah. Wow.
So you've been launching your book and traveling and speaking, and how has that impacted how you eat on the road and how you look after yourself
It
during
can be
menopause?
tricky. It can be really tricky because that routine isn't there. The
Mm,
rhythm isn't there.
yeah.
You're kind of in different beds or you're in different places. The water is different. You might not have access to as much water. Um, the foods clearly would be different. I'm trying to minimize the amount of wheat I have and the
Mm,
amount of sugar I have, but it is in everything.
yeah.
And in any of the foods, you might have one or two, maybe different things on the menu,
Mm,
but often, if you're going, say, to an event, then the canapes, a lot of them will have some kind of
oh,
wheat in them, you know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yes.
So I've found that actually having something to eat beforehand has really
Mm,
helped. So making sure I have protein in the morning for
yeah.
breakfast, that's really key for me now.
Mm,
Um, so I was doing quite a lot of fasting, but you recommended then not to fast as much.
yes.
So that's kind of settled my system down a little bit.
Mm,
But it's just so tricky because what's available is pretty much processed stuff.
yes.
If you're in an airport, there's maybe occasionally a gluten-free sandwich,
Mm,
not often. There's usually pasta salads, there's all sorts of things there, maybe sushi. So it's kind of tricky trying to find food. So having plenty of water with me is
yeah.
key. Having snacks with me are key, nuts and things.
Mm,
Although I don't process now nuts quite so well, so
Yeah.
I'd have a little bit, but not too much.
Hmm.
you know. But you can go to a deli and get boiled eggs. You can go and get meat and some cheese or whatever. Although I'm trying to kind of steer a little bit away from dairy at the moment
Yeah.
anyway. So it can be, and it can be quite stressful then, particularly because you're hungry and you're looking for food, but the food that's
Mm.
there isn't really supportive of your system.
Yes.
Um, and then you might want to try local foods like I was doing in Hong Kong and whatever, and then,
Mm.
have a serious accident. And so it isn't easy to travel.
Yeah.
Um, and I think preparation is key and having things that will last the distance.
Mm.
And making sure, for me, making sure there's plenty of water there. And I bring along my own teas, I bring along decaf coffee.
Yes.
If we go over to Wales, I bring my own percolator and I would have
Mm.
decaf coffee if I want something like that, but I'd have it black, so
Yeah.
I would kind of have a bit more, but it's similar if you were having a child, you know what I mean? You would make sure that you have food there for the
Yes.
child, but now it's you that you're minding, you that you're caring for, and putting you number one
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than your needs way down the back of the list, or way down the back of the queue. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
I often compare it to looking after your inner toddler.
Oh,
That's
yes.
what we have inside
Yeah.
us. And that's why, especially for gut health and menopause symptom management,
Yeah.
when we do get into those routines and like that, we think that, we wouldn't skip a meal for our child, but we do it for
True.
ourselves all the time. We think, I'll just power
Yeah.
through lunch and I'll get this done, or I won't
Yeah.
have dinner tonight, it'll save on calories, or I won't eat
Yeah.
in the morning time. And that's the one reason why
Yeah.
fasting can be a bit disruptive. It can work for some women, but if you've
Yes.
got a lot of stress in your life, you have gut issues, I always say pause the fasting. Let's get that
Right.
routine back, soothe our inner toddler, look after our gut health, and then you might be better
Yeah.
able then to fast in the future. It might suit you. But
Yes.
like that, keeping the stress low, keeping our gut calm, our inner
Yes.
toddler cared for and looked after. And that can
Yes.
help so much in a significant way for menopause symptoms.
Absolutely. And I think also movement for me, if I'm traveling, we might be in the car for a while, or we might be on a
Mm,
plane, or, particularly if we go over on the ferry, we're sitting a lot.
yeah.
So, I try to get as much movement as I can in,
Mm,
just because I feel much better. And if I'm out in nature, I feel so much better. And I don't feel as bloated. I don't
yeah.
feel quite so, that I'm got all this kind of food sitting there. So if
Mm,
I'm eating slightly smaller meals and doing more movement and drinking
mm,
more water, that
yes.
really does help. So the
Mm,
movement for me is key as
yeah.
well. And sleep,
Mm,
the sleep is essential. So I'm taking the magnesium now at night. That's
mm,
really helping.
brilliant.
Helping to just be able to slow the mind down. I come off
Mm,
social media. I try for at least 2 hours. We have a dog, so that's much
yeah.
easier for me to get away and just
Mm,
clock off, walk for an hour at night. Not fast, but just, a good
yeah.
pace.
Yeah.
But then I'm preparing then to get to sleep. I'm preparing to go to bed. I wouldn't watch any news. I
Mm,
wouldn't even read. So I'm just kind of slowing everything down, dimmer lights, quieten my system
mm,
down, and then go to bed. And then I would kind of do my meditation, I do my breathing, and then I would be able to drop off. But of course, when you're traveling, that can be disruptive as well. But when we travel with the dog, it's so much easier because then I can say, right, that's it, I'm gone. But when you're walking in a city and you don't know the area,
oh,
and
yes.
there's kind of challenges there. So I would try to get into a park, but not at night. I would
Yeah.
sort of try and get up early in the morning and have a good walk in the morning,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so to keep my, everything flowing and fluid.
Absolutely.
Um,
And it keeps that
yeah.
routine going for you, Michelle, then as well, which is
Definitely,
fantastic.
definitely.
And
And for
that
me, nature,
continuity.
absolutely. And nature is so important for me to keep my balance,
Yeah.
So just getting out, even like this morning, I didn't get a chance to go for a walk, but I was out in the garden barefoot, feet on the
Mm,
grass, breathing
yes.
and just doing my thing before coming on the call with you. So it's kind of, just
Yes.
I think it is making ourselves a priority. And I think as we go
Mm,
through menopause, that becomes clear that we can't put everybody else first, that we have to put ourselves first.
mm,
And as the estrogen levels drop and that kind of tolerance for bullshit,
Yeah.
drops, we're like, no, actually, this is important to me. And if I don't do it, then
Mm.
everybody suffers or everybody wears some of this, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So I have to now take responsibility for myself. And then that ripples through the family, that
Yeah.
ripples out.
Mm.
So I think it is also that pivot for women as well, is to kind of really mind themselves. And we're so
Mm.
used to looking after everybody else. And I mean, our profession as well is to look
Yes.
after people, isn't it? So
Yeah,
we also
absolutely.
have to
Yeah.
be massive advocates for that
We can
for
be guilty.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Of, cramming in another client, and particularly I was guilty of that when I was traveling. It was like I was only there for a set period of time and I had to see everybody as I could to be
Mhm.
able to pay for the trip, but
Yeah.
also to make some money as well.
Mhm.
So it was kind of cram, 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 cram.
Yes. Yeah.
So, that's
Big
not
pressure.
helping anybody,
No, 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 it
you know,
isn't.
it
And if
isn't.
somebody watching this is experiencing menopause symptoms that are related to their gut health, like bloating or digestive issues, what would you say to them?
Oh, seek help.
Mm.
Definitely come and see a professional. Definitely keep track of what's going on.
Yes.
And it's not a failure,
Mm.
we need reading glasses.
Yeah.
As we get older, things change. So we do need support. So this is an additional support. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be, having therapy or whatever for the rest of your life. This is a short intervention, someone walking beside you on the journey for a short
Mm.
time. But then when you have these new skills, the new
Yeah.
normal, then you can actually carry on
Mm.
following those guidelines, and occasionally I will have an ice cream, and occasionally I will have it's not like it's
Yeah.
over, but I know then the impact of what's going to happen. It's not like it's
Mm.
taking me by surprise,
Yeah.
but I think that's it. It's having more information and then being able to make informed
Yeah.
decisions with the right information. So definitely seek out a professional. And it's not a failure. It isn't
No,
at all.
no,
It
no,
isn't.
hugely.
No.
That's what we're
Yeah.
here for, Michelle, isn't it?
Indeed, it is. It
To
is,
help people on their journey
Yeah.
in whichever way it is. And if you could
Yes.
give
Yes.
anybody watching today one message from this conversation, what would you say that would be?
Um, that they're not alone.
Mm.
There are people there
Yeah.
ready, willing, and able to support, to give guidance, to help, to
Mm.
offload, so that women do not have to carry that burden alone anymore, that there is someone that they can offload it to and help process whatever it is, whether it's the food, whether it's the gut issues, whether it's emotional. And, in Chinese medicine, they talk about the gut being the seat of emotions. So,
Yes.
you can get help for, the physical
Mhm.
issues, but also the emotional issues. So, you don't have to handle all of this alone. And in fact, it's counterproductive now if you
Yeah.
think you can roll up your sleeves and manage this on your own. You can't, everybody needs a little bit of help and support. And similarly for the men, they don't have to suffer in
Mhm.
silence, that actually there is support out there as well. And there is understanding out there as
Mm.
well of how difficult it is to be on the sidelines
Mhm.
and not know what's going on, and feel like, well, I bet I'm walking on eggshells. I better
Yeah.
not say anything. Whereas that's the exact opposite of what's needed here,
Mm.
So actually they can be part of the team, they can be part of the support. And that speaks volumes for a woman, and she will be forever grateful,
Mhm.
and loyal because she knows you've stepped up,
Yeah.
you've come into support rather than stepped away. So
Mhm.
that really bonds you, in an extraordinary way.
Mhm.
So I think for both men and women,
Yeah.
they're not alone, that there is support, and seek out talk. There's often a
Mhm.
chance to chat with the person,
Yeah.
15 minutes, half an hour, to get a feel for the person
Mm.
and to sort of feel like, is what they're saying, is it resonating? Does
Mhm.
it feel true for me? Do I have a feeling of that
Yeah.
they really understand what's going on? I think that's important too. And if it's not the first person, try another person. The second one, it might be the third, might be the fourth, but
Mm.
have get information, but also reach out to people and find out,
Mm.
have you experience in this? how can you
Yeah.
help? And even there is a chapter in the book as well about support for the wingman because he matters too. His
Mm.
needs matter
Yeah.
too. And there's also a list of places where the man could go for
Oh,
support, for
fantastic.
emotional support as
Mm.
well. So there's about 15 different places because not one intervention is right for
Yeah.
every single person. So
Mm.
that's why I think it's amazing that there's choice
Yeah.
now. So it gives a full list where they could go, have a little look, try it out, see,
Mm.
and then, say, yeah, I'm going to commit to myself.
Yeah.
I'm going to commit to this process. Now, I know it depends on finances, it depends on
Mm.
time, but it is making it a priority and making yourself a priority. And when the funds are there, then off you go. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I think it is important that there is a backup.
Mm.
So maybe and men don't regularly do that, talk to other men about, sit down in the pub and talk about,
Yes, true.
well, my wife's going
Mm.
through menopause, but
Yeah.
maybe this book can be an opening for
Mm.
that. And what we've done is we've also looked at creating an audio book. So my husband is narrating the men's
Oh,
voices in that
fantastic.
book, and I'm narrating the rest of it. So it's again a joint collaboration, and he's going to be also part. We're looking to do some um, online meetings and then
Mm.
also in-person meetings. And he's going to be part of those too, because I think it's important to
Fantastic.
have the balance. But
Mm.
also for the women, and I've noticed that some women don't want men to be present. They want to be able to offload, they want to be
Yes.
able to share without men being present. So there's an opportunity for women
Mm.
to be on their own and share. And then there's opportunities for men to be
Yes.
with myself and John then to share as well. So there's kind of a connection. So there's the audiobook which is coming,
Mm.
and we've already had a request for that, which is
Oh,
amazing.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I've had a few people ask, would it be translated into German? So I have a lady who's very kindly said she would look through it and
Oh,
have a
amazing.
look. So there's a few things in the pipeline as well. But I think coming back to my original statement and to answer your question, definitely that you know you don't have to do it alone.
Mm.
And you're not alone in this. There is support out
Yeah.
there, and just finding the right fit for you is
Mhm.
so important. And that can really help support you to another level in the relationship and to an understanding in yourself of what's actually happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, no,
yeah.
Michelle, such a powerful message. And thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom with
Thank
me
you,
today.
Rachel. Thank you so
And for
much.
anyone
Yeah,
that would like to learn about more about Michelle or pick up a copy of the Menopause Wingman, I'll be including details below. And
thank
Michelle
you.
is
Thank you.
available for speaking events and
Yep,
collaborations if you like to reach
yep.
out to her.
Thank you.
And if today's conversation made you realize that your gut symptoms may be connected with your hormones, don't ignore them. And there's
Yep,
so much we can do to support them through your gut during perimenopause and menopause. And if you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it.
that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Rachel, for this opportunity. And thank
It's
you
a
to everyone
pleasure
who's
to
been
have you
listening.
here today,
Yeah,
Michelle.
thank you. Thank you, Rachel.